And welcome to another edition of Haunted Hotels. My name is Sam Baltrusis, and I'm an author and journalist. Joining me is my good friend and castmate from The Curse of Lizzie Borden, Luann Joly. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here tonight.
So, Luann, I've been wanting to talk to you for months. So we filmed in February of this year, and I'll tell you, like looking back at that experience at the Lizzie Borden Bed and Breakfast was life changing for me.
That's for sure. I don't think you can go into Lizzie Borden's and not be affected by that place.
Well, I mean, so speaking of that, I've actually been at the house like probably about 30 to 40 times, and I've investigated like leading up to our investigation back in February of this past year. Tell me about your backstory with the house and what led to the show.
Wow. Lucky you. I've actually only been in the house about a handful of times over the years, which it's right next door, but it's a place that charges for admission, rents out a room. So most of the times that I was actually there, I was with some friends who had more access to the house. They did a lot of events there, things like that. And every time that I've gone to Lizzie's, the EVPs are off the chart. Things happen. I've had my face burned in there. And, lucky for us during our seance that we used that table that was a lot more stable and strong because the seance before the one that I did with you guys was violent. The table was actually trying to lift up off the floor and slam me in the face. It was all I could do to keep it from hitting me in the face. It would have injured me. And by the time the seance was over, the table literally was on the floor in pieces. So, that house is every time I visited it, it has proven to be a pretty violent haunt when it wants to be.
So, I know that you also are a leader of a paranormal group. So tell us a little bit about your group and the types of cases that you've worked on.
Well, I'm the founder of Whaling City Ghosts, and it just became apparent the more that I became involved with the paranormal, the more I researched and learned that I just sort of belonged in the field. I mean, I struggled my entire life because I had a negative haunt that started when I was a child and lasted into my 30s. It haunted me and attacked me for 22 years. So, I'm trying to deal with that and prove to myself that I'm not crazy, that these things were actually happening. And, the more I researched, the more I got involved with the paranormal, it was finally one day I was like, okay, I get it. I'm kind of being called into the field. And I founded Whaling City Ghosts. And at the time, it was about 2004 when I founded the team. And it was sort of difficult for women in the field. It can be in a lot of fields. So it started out as an all female team in the beginning, and I have had men on the team over the years here and there. But today we are again actually an all female team once again, and I feel like by doing that, I'm giving women a chance that they might not get out there. It's harder for investigative women to find a place out there because people who have teams are looking more for a woman who can be the medium for the team or the psychic. So, I wanted people like me. I mean, I've got some psychic skills myself, but they're not something that I really can control. They happen when they want to happen, and
Right.
they have always just seemed to happen when they need to happen. So, for me to start the team and get going, um, I felt like I was helping other people out to have their chance. And, it was great. I had a chemist on the team. I had my brave girl, Crystal, who, I mean, nothing fazed this girl. You could have, things flying around the house and she was solid as a rock. She was always right behind me, getting out there. And as, we got a little more experience, it definitely became evident that we are really good at EVP, or, at least I am with recording EVP. So I do focus a lot more myself on the EVP, but, I'm open to my people trying things. So we try a lot of different equipment, which you saw when we worked together. Um, I do use a lot of electronic equipment also, because I figure sooner or later, if we keep doing the same thing, using scientific method and keep using the same methods over and over and over again, something's got to give. The paranormal field is still not considered a science today. So I would actually like to see that change. And I hope my team can help that happen.
I have to say the EVPs that you captured, whether it was before or during the investigation at the Lizzie Borden house, kind of blew me away. What do you think? So, Why do you feel that the spirits respond to you specifically?
That was my biggest question out there. And, I thought I was going to go out there in the field and maybe I just prove that none of this exists. I'm just crazy. But, it kept happening over and over again. They specifically would say my name. I'd get like these big, long sentences in an EVP, and that doesn't happen all the time. And I used to wonder, what in the world is it that attracts all of these ghosts to me? I can't move to a home and not be visited by spirits, or, um, out in the field, I've been followed home by negative things. And, you know, how could this happen? What is the explanation? And the funny thing, in like somewhere around the year 2000, I was diagnosed with this really weird spinal condition. And the more I learned about it, I really feel as if my ghost magnetism is actually related to that. Like I have a very strong or different energy field. And this is going to sound really weird, but the strings that make everything up, going with like the whole string theory and multiple universes and things like that, something just kind of, it makes sense to me. The strings all have their own song in a way. So if you look at energy in like a different way, a frequency, a sound, a song, basically, I think like my song or my energy, my connection to the strings is a different song, and it attracts attention of these spirits who are on a different wavelength, a different frequency again. So, maybe part of me is on the same frequency as the spirits are, if that makes sense to you. But that, it's like I always have to take a problem and pull it apart to try to put it back together in a way that makes sense. And to me, I've always thought like the actual human spirit is something so tiny that we can't give it weight, we can't give it mass, because it's such a tiny thing. So if you're going on an atomic level that is, down to the size of strings, that's where I think you'll find the human spirit, like in that range of tininess.
So this is haunted hotels, and we actually investigated probably one of the most notoriously haunted hotels or bed and breakfasts in the country, or maybe even in the world. Why do you think hotels specifically have a penchant for being haunted?
Oh, well, hotels are just one of those places where a lot of people go, and sometimes people live in them. That's their home. And a lot of dramatic things happen in hotels, murders, prostitution, drugs, um, adultery type situations, things like that. Or a lot of like the white lady stories where it was like a woman who was left behind by her groom on their wedding day. Things like that happen in a lot of hotels. So, any place where you have the potential for a lot of human emotion, a lot of different activities to happen, I think it's just another waiting place for a spirit to end up being stuck there or want to be there.
Well, we have a location, the Lizzie Borden house or bed and breakfast in Fall River, and because of what happened in 1892, people suspect that that is the cause of the haunting. But I also think that when it comes to the Lizzie Borden bed and breakfast, that the hauntings also are a result of people investigating the location over and over and over again. What are your thoughts on sort of people bringing in their own paranormal baggage to the location? And is that what we were dealing with when we were filming Curse of Lizzie Borden?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think we talked about it a little bit. That whole area, the landmass, has a history for violent crimes and things like that. But you also have people going in, staying overnight at the bed and breakfast who want activity to happen. And I think, a lot of them don't do it intentionally. They're just, they're there for fun. They want to have a paranormal experience and they inadvertently conjure something or summon something. I mean, there's a Ouija board sitting in the sitting room where Andrew Borden was hacked to death.
Right,
And anyone can pick up that board and, call in whatever's within, range of them. And then it ends up in the house. And with our, resident entity that we were tangling with, I feel like he took over, somehow he got involved or he was there all along, like we were kind of thinking, and something brought him to that area. Maybe the crime itself, maybe the previous crimes that happened, before the axe murders had come to be. But, once you get something like that in there and he's been given permission, he's going to take over ownership. And to me, that was not Andrew Borden that was attacking me with a table during the
right,
seance.
right.
You don't normally see human spirits doing things like that are so violent. That's more of a negative entity, in my opinion. And he decided that that was his place, that was his home, maybe. But he got a lot of attention there. When people were talking to Andrew, I really think they were talking to him. And when the psychic would be, oh, Andrew's getting angry right now and things are happening, it wasn't Andrew Borden, it was our friend, the entity. So, all of those people over the years, he loved it there. He was getting exactly what he wanted.
Now, to give you some backstory with me, so I have written several books, and two of the books actually featured the Borden case. But I didn't know I was related to the Borden family until about 2 years ago. So tell me about your experience with Lizzie Borden specifically, and or even Lizbeth, as we know that she liked to be called later in life.
Well, where I live is 20 minutes away from Fall River, where these murders took place in 1892. And this area never forgot that. I mean, we grow up hearing the nursery rhyme or jump rope song, whatever. The Lizzie Borden got an axe, gave her mother 40 whacks when she saw what she had done, gave her father 41, and it's, for some, it's a joke. Um, and a lot of people really think that she got away with murder. And whether she did it or not, they acquitted her and she paid for it. She was ridiculed. Kids played pranks and, throw pebbles at her windows, knock on her door, run away. So we just, it's part of our culture almost, the whole Lizzie Borden thing. But it's weird because when I was really young, I learned the nursery rhyme, and just something bothered me about it. Like, she couldn't have done it. Who goes around ex murdering their parents? And I didn't think she was guilty without knowing anything about it. So to actually get the chance to go into the house and be there where that happened, it was really an experience walking through the doors the first time. As you've seen the house, it's beautiful. It looks like you just stepped foot into 1892. And um, to get the chance to record in there. And then one of the first EVPs that I pull out of that house is, "I'm a good daughter." And you heard that. There is so much emotion in how it's almost like she's screaming it. "I'm a good daughter."
And
It means a lot
that's
to
that,
her.
that EVP, Luann, I wasn't part of your investigation the first night, and then when I was there the second day, and actually like she kept saying, "I'm a good daughter, I'm a good daughter." I had no idea that you captured that EVP. So that's one of those moments where we were all kind of like on the same page, combating this evil entity.
Yeah. It's sad though, because a lot of people associate that with Elizabeth herself. And that to me, I think it's hard to explain. Like, there was some kind of connection between the Borden house and the murders and everything. With, I don't know if I knew as a kid that I was going to investigate there someday or something, but I feel like Lizzie needed us, and she knew that by coming. Like, I'm just one of those people. If I know somebody needs help, I'm not going to quit until I feel like I've given that help or the situation is resolved. And it's been years since, the first time I went in there and felt like I needed to help the spirits there, because, it wasn't just Lizzie, it was Eliza Darling's children and Eliza Darling herself. And I feel it. And it's funny that you're related to her too, because Sarah Maria Cornell is another spirit that I came in contact with in Fall River in a mill building. And it took almost 3 years to figure out what their horrible screams. It's like these blood curdling screams. And then at the end, a man cuts in and he's like, "Who are you? Leave." And it's like, it's a woman screaming. And this guy, like, who's kind of acting like, "This is none of your concern. Get out of here." And one day, the researcher from my team found an older book in the library, The Mill Worker
Mhm.
and the Minister and the Mill Worker, actually. And she's like, "You got to see this book." Like, I actually had to go to the Fall River Library because it was a historic book, if I can spit that one out. An older book, like one of the first editions when they first told of Sarah Maria Cornell's story. And she's like, "I know this is that EVP." And then it all kind of made sense, because we had gone to the Quikasham Club, which they call the Q Club. It was built right around the same time as the Borden murders. I think it was 1897. They built the Quikasham Club. It was like this gentleman's club that upper crust of society went to, and the ladies weren't allowed there. And all of the spirits knew about Sarah Maria Cornell, and they kept pointing me to a book, telling me her nickname was Marie. They called her Marie or Maria, as her middle name was Maria. And I guess that was common back then, to be called by your middle name rather than your first name. They wanted me to find the book. Marie is in the book. Help Marie. And all of these other spirits. One of them had like an Irish accent. And that actually played into the whole story, because she was a mill worker. There were a lot of, Irish immigrants that were working as servants in this gentleman's club. who's to say that this Irish guy that wanted me to find the book wasn't somehow related with Sarah Marie Cornell? She was said to be really pretty. Maybe he was a boyfriend, or what would you call that back then? A suitor. And they all knew what happened to her. Of course, they're spirits now. I think they know a lot more after they've, crossed over. So they know she's dead. They know that she's a spirit, that she screams and is tormented by the horrible way that the minister killed her, dragging her through the streets for a good hour. People actually reported to the police that they heard, a woman in turmoil screaming and yelling, and he beat her all the way. Once they were cleaning her up for burial, they found like a broken arm that was all bent and big handprints on her hips. He tried to remove the baby from her womb, for God's sakes. And they were calling it a suicide. They found her hanging. Her knees are dragging in the snow. Like, it would be, I think, a little hard to hang yourself if your knees are dragging in the snow. I mean, all you have to do is stand up. But they did. They considered it suicide. And that was right in that location where Lizzie Borden's house is.
Well,
So,
it was close. So yes, Sarah
yeah,
Maria Cornell, like we
yeah.
didn't know that. I've actually have written about this case myself, had no idea that both the Borden family and myself were also related to her. And the connector is Innocent Cornell Borden. And once we found out that Innocent Cornell Borden was actually uh, a family member, that she was tied to the Cornell family, that's when we got the connector to Sarah Maria Cornell. She was originally from Vermont. She was a mill girl. So a mill girl was that worked at different mills throughout Massachusetts, specifically in Lowell. She was down in the sort of the Fall River, Rhode Island area to work at a mill. She met the Reverend Ephraim Avery, who was known to be a womanizer. He apparently had courted, probably actually not courted, probably raped her. She became pregnant with his child. We believe, as historians, she was confronting him, and she actually wrote a letter that said, "If I go missing, reach out to the Reverend Ephraim Avery from Bristol, Rhode Island, or from Bristol." And so she goes, and you're right. Like, what happened to her? There's no possible way that it was a suicide, Luann. When you're telling me the story, it just breaks my heart to hear that, and also to know that we are related to her.
It's sad because she wouldn't probably have been a mill worker, but her mother was from what was his name? Her grandfather had money. He owned one of the mills out
Yeah,
in Vermont, and her mother married a mill worker from her father's mill, and he was so angry he disowned her and wouldn't give her a penny.
he was
And when
he was a laughing well.
Yep, yep,
Yep,
that's the
yep.
name, yep. And then, of course, he disowned her, and the father took off and left the mother, and that left the children to basically fend for themselves. That's how she ended up being a mill worker.
So, Lou, and having filmed the show and then seeing the finished product with all the recreations, what are your thoughts on the recreations? I was blown away by the
Oh,
recreations.
the recreations were, like, awesome. Whoever played Lizzie, oh my god, there were points where, like, she looked exactly like her, and that homicide face was awesome. But, the girl who played Eliza, she had me crying when she was, like, sitting there and feeling for her children, and, I mean, I was there at that seance, so all of those emotions and everything that I felt, I mean, I practically wanna cry now just thinking of her. She played the part really well. I mean, they blew me away too. That
And
and that's interesting too, because until I saw you at the Salem event, I did not know, and I said it to you that I swore when we were having that seance that you took my hand and you put a pen in it. And then I'm watching the show and I see myself just pick up the pen like I knew where it was. My eyes were closed and start writing like a crazy woman. But, that probably blew me away more than the acting, because the acting was great. But that was not at all how I remembered it. So, to see it differently from what I felt and experienced, that was really weird, put it that way.
Well, I think I'll like look, so kind of for people who haven't watched The Curse of Lizzie Borden, you should definitely watch it now on Discovery Plus. But I think like looking back on it, so when I came in that first day, sitting at the location like where Andrew Borden was murdered, so it's not the actual couch. By the way, people are like, "Well, was it the couch?" I'm like, "No, it's not the couch; it's a replica." But I was sitting there. I was supposed to be a talking head, Luann. Like I was supposed to talk about the history, and then Eliza comes through, and I start channeling Eliza Borden. And I will say that I don't remember channeling her. I remember bits and pieces from that. And then she was part of the conversation throughout the entire show. And
Oh,
so, as
definitely.
someone who was part of a show that I felt so deeply connected to, I'm really grateful when the producers were able to let us tell the stories of the spirits. It wasn't just about Lizzie Borden. It was about Eliza. It was about Sarah Maria Cornell. It was about all the spirits that we have encountered, and to in a way where we're able to go and actually help those spirits.
That was amazing because, I mean, I never really met Dave. The only contact that I had with him before the show is just actually seeing his shows. And somehow he put you in there and Chris in there and me and Dave, and something happened that, I didn't expect to happen. I thought things were going to be different, and I didn't have faith that you guys could help the spirits, and it's like it was a revelation for me to know that going in and doing the show and everything that we did, I think it settled a lot of things for some dead people out there, and maybe I shouldn't worry about them as much, but I mean, I do actually worry about some of these spirits out there, and knowing that Lisbeth was kind of trapped and had to keep going back where she didn't want to go because of this entity, and that Eliza Darling and the children are heard in that home all the time. So I know they're there. I've heard them myself. And, I think that part, like with the kid spirits, that's something that, I mean, I don't think anybody can resist feeling sorry for a little child's ghost, So to have us all go out there and end up being like that dream team, like you called us, um, that's like a dream come true. That's like a paranormal dream come true to, at least for me, to be able to get a team together and go to a location and actually do something that helps these beings that are no longer with us. So, you know, for me, I don't think I'll ever forget it.
It, I will say that. So, to kind of give you some backstory with me, I was working on another project, and they were like, "Hey, there's a Lizzie Borden shock doc. So Dave wants you to be a part of it, and the network wanted you to be a part of it." And I'm like, "Well, I don't know if I want to," because I have always had bad experiences at that house too, Luann. So when you said you had bad experiences, I'm like, there was something in the basement. I've had dreams that really were terrifying for many years about that house, and I knew that this case was going to be something. It was going to be intense, but I going in, I had a different idea what it was going to be, and then what happened was completely different. It was like, oh my gosh, this is about healing the wounds of the past. This is about helping the children. This is about helping Eliza help. And I was guessing that it was going to be a Lizzie Borden shock doc, but it was so much more than that.
Definitely. That's probably what blows me away too. It started out as a TV show, but I mean, there was so much more to it. And even, people who are watching this shock doc, they, it's a TV show, so they want to take as much shocking, things that happen during our investigation, and they want to put that together so that they get a good response. But I mean, we were all there a week, so there was a lot of stuff that happened that just was not going to be able to fit into this, 2-hour documentary. And, you know, um, like some of the stuff was really scary. Like the night that I went up on the third floor, I don't know if you, I think you were there that night, but you left. And I think Kristen, it was just me and Dave in the house that night. And Dave just, and he's such a nice guy, it's so awful, but I think the house was affecting him.
It was. Yeah,
He
it
had
was.
like this scary vibe, and in the back of my head, I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm alone in the house with Dave, and there's axes everywhere. And he's a lot bigger than me, and all these things. And I'm up on the third floor, and like stuff is happening. I'm hearing a thing whisper, and they had told me, oh, if anything happens during the night, just call Dave and have him come up there. And it's like, do I really want to call Dave up here? Like, if that entity takes Dave over, I'm not going to be able to fight this big 6-foot dude off. And if he gets his hands on an axe, so I'm up on the third floor, like, what to do. And I'm telling you, when I walked out of my room to see what the heck was going on in the front room, I knew, like, if I walked through that doorway, like, it was going to try to hurt me. And there was no way. And that's not even me. I'm like, usually got a team backing me up, and I'll be like, hey, there's something on the other side of that door that wants to hurt me. We're going to charge right in. But in that case, I couldn't. I'm alone. I don't want to get hurt. And I know they can hurt you. I've had a few experiences that way. And the last person that I would have called that night would have been Dave, because it was like, and I think you saw it in the seance. He wasn't himself. Like, he's normally, in charge, does what he needs to do. And that night you could see he kept, putting his hands down. He was, working at his hand. You could see something wasn't right for him that night.
Well, I mean, I've known Dane for a while, and the thing is, he was affected. I would like my role like after the initial channeling of Eliza was to make sure everybody was safe, and so Chris did that as well. We both did that, but we also had to do what we were there to do, which was to help the spirits. And I will say, Luann too, I was terrified. Like when you were next to me, I'm like, she's going to kill me.
Oh, it wanted to, believe me. That was all it kept saying. Die, 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 die,
Yeah.
die. It was trying to, I don't know, almost like make me lose myself in a way. Like it wanted to drown me out.
So
Like,
I wasn't worried about Dave. I was worried about you. And
and I
yeah, and so
understand.
yeah, and so Dave is a big guy, but Dave also, he, not to say you don't have a lot of experience, Luann, but Dave is also very sensitive to you. So he was affected by what's going on. And if we look at this show was about Dave Schrader becoming going from a skeptic to a true believer after a week-long investigation. Like that's what this was about.
I think we did it.
Yeah, I know, right? and so with that said, I'm like you nailed it when you said that there was a lot of stuff that didn't make the show. And I think for me, the parts that led up to the show, for example, I woke up at 3:15 every night leading up to the investigation. I got a call from a psychic about a couple days before filming that I was going to be in a car accident. It was going to kill me. I was going to be in a black SUV, and it was going to be heading to a film set. And they said, you're going to be on I-93. And I'm like, oh,
Oh
crap.
my,
Yeah, like that's where I'm going to go to Fall River. So I take a train. I'm like, I'm going to avoid going on I-93. And guess what Dave Schrader pulls up
oh
in?
my God, a
I
black
know.
SUV. Wow. I'm glad
So
that didn't happen.
yeah, well, so Luann, you like when you and I we were heading to the woods with Dave and Chris. It was like
Oh,
that was
that's
something that was
devastating.
told to me, and I'm like,
Yeah.
and so I think we were all being attacked, Luann. Like Dave was
Oh,
being affected.
definitely.
Chris's mother was, his dad came through to me while I was channeling Eliza, saying, like, hi, this is Reggie, Chris's father. He's got a loved one that's sick that that she needs help. And having that conversation and not even knowing Chris had a dad named Reggie, I had no idea. Uh, and that was crazy. In the seance, Luann, and that you talked about the pen. I will say that I saw claws coming out of your hand.
Wow.
Yeah, and you were being affected too, but Dave was being affected as well. So you saw the two people, you to my left and Dave Schrader to my right, and I'm like, oh my god, what? And if you see my face during the seance, Luann, I, I'm like,
A few times I did.
I'm just like, what the hell? but look, like, so Luann, looking back, like, would you do anything differently from that experience? I mean, I would say that week-long investigation has changed my life, but I don't know if I would do anything differently.
Um, hmm. That's hard to, because I mean, it feels almost like we were kind of led into doing what we needed to do,
Right.
you know. And I mean, I try not to let a place like that affect me, but it's like if you were there like the first few hours, it's like it was definitely affecting me because like you almost need to put like a wall up. And then once I've got that wall up, I'm okay because those kind of cases are more or less most of our caseload are more negative cases. So, I mean, I have to have a wall up. And then you guys are doing the seance and you want me to put my wall down. And, what happened during the seance, I think kind of explains that. I don't want those things in me. I mean, they probably have a head out for me because of all the ones I've kicked out of other places and things like that. So, to like actually let one of my own enemies come into my castle, that was really very hard. I would rather not do something like that again if I could help it, but at the same time I know if I thought it would help another soul, I would do it. I try to help when I can. Whether it costs us a little, and like emotionally, it cost you a lot. It
Yeah.
hurt to feel, and I am very much an empath. So when I'm surrounded by people who are feeling all of what you guys were feeling that night, it's devastating in on one side, but the other, it's like a miracle happens. So I
Yeah.
mean, I have to feel proud and good that we got together and we did that together.
And I totally agree with you. I mean, like, I we went through hell together, Luann. I mean, like, but bottom line, we went through hell together, and we went to hell, but we came back, and that's what. So we, like, by going on this journey, and like the seance, to me, like looking back at it, it was so dangerous, like what was going on and what was happening. But you're right. To be able to get the spirits to cross over, we had to attack the dark entity that, whether or not it was in the house or in the neighborhood, or attached to some, like there was something that we were finding. And we baited it. Like when I was going under initially, I was baiting it to the table, and it was kind of like trying to say that it was something else. This is the same thing that pretends to be Andrew Borden. Whatever it is, it pretends to be Andrew Borden often.
Yep, definitely.
And so, with that said, like, have you been back to the house since then? 'Cause I haven't been back.
Oh, I'd like to, just to see if it still feels better, because one thing that has kind of bothered me is knowing that if someone goes in there and starts asking for Andrew,
Yeah.
or starts provoking, or picks up that Ouija board, he's just waiting. He'll go back as soon as he has the tiniest opening. He's going right back in that house. And that's one of the things that I've learned. Public places are a lot more difficult to bless or to clear of a negative entity, because you don't completely have ownership, as the way that our minister described it to me. It has everyone's ownership. So if, say, you wanted to bless an entity out of like a park, you would need like the whole community to take away the permission that this entity got it to wherever it is. So in a case with like Lizzie Borden's house, there's another public place. People can rent a room, people can do a tour, and you know it would be a lot harder to keep it out forever, because as soon as someone else goes in and again gives it permission, I think it's going to go right back and camp out in the house again.
Well, as we saw, like, I mean, what I got from the spirit realm, but there was a desperation, specifically with Eliza and her children, to help the children. And I believe that people ask me, did we cross Lizzie? I don't think we crossed Lizzie, but we did give her some peace, and she helped in the crossing portion, which. As we saw there, it wasn't just a few people that crossed. It was like the whole neighborhood crossed. It was like 60 people.
That was actually really beautiful. The way that I saw it, it was like, I don't know, every spirit that went kind of had its own color and its own size, and
It
the
was
place they
beautiful.
went was just golden. And I mean,
Yep.
I think I was crying at that point.
Yeah,
It
like the
was,
when we were crossing the spirits, it was like we had two beams of light. So Chris and I bonded together, like we had a cord going to each other, and the two beams of light, and they were just floating up to heaven. It was so beautiful.
it was that's
And
something I'll never forget either. So, but that's something that, we can't, if Lisbeth isn't ready to make that final step. And it's one thing that I found in my experiences that, we can, I almost look at negative entities as easier to get rid of than a human spirit, because we do our thing. We've got, a set way we do our blessings. We're out of there. We're done. With human spirits, it's almost like if you want the family to have peace, you're better off, talking with them, rationalizing that with them, things like that. You can talk to them about crossing over, and um, they don't have to do it. They have their own free will. And, sometimes they'll say, sure, I'm ready. Let's go. I'm walking into the light. But most of the time, whatever it is that attaches them to the place that they're haunting, or the person that they're haunting, or the object they're haunting, they're not going to leave until they're ready.
and so with cousin Lizzie or cousin Lisbeth, she's actually attached at the Maplecroft location. And when I was with you in the house, that I mean, I've been there before, but there was a peace in that house that I haven't felt before. What's your experience with Maplecroft?
Maplecroft, that was the one and only time that I've actually been in Maplecroft, and we did get to go, I don't remember if you were with me. We did get to go a couple times, and the first time that I went in there, it had that same desperate feeling, like you say, that the Borden house had.
Right.
And once we did that seance and we returned to Maplecroft, it was like the whole place just felt airier and lighter and happier than it was previously. So maybe, whatever we did at the house was something that Lizzie wanted. Lizzie probably cared about those children. Um, they were kind of related to her by marriage, and that would be her great great uncle, I guess. But I think that people tend to think that Lizzie is this horrible, mean spirited, ex murdering person. And they forget about the person that she actually was in life. And she, did a lot for the church. She taught Sunday school. She read to sick children and elderly people at the hospital. She was on the hospital board, for crying out loud, which is something that was completely unheard of in that day and age. She was the one and only woman in the world on a hospital board in, the late 1880s, early 1890s. Spit that one out. And things like that, helping animals, helping children, helping the elderly. That's not usually something that a mean-spirited axe murderer type person does. They don't give of themselves. So, knowing what kind of person Lizzie was in life, I'm sure she's that same exact person in death. So is she going to feel for those children who are trapped there and probably frightened by this entity who, entities like to do that. They like to make themselves scary and powerful and make people believe that they have control, because I think that those human spirits could have crossed over, but there's an entity there scaring them, telling them that they can't, you know. So if you look at it that way, we probably did something that is priceless to the people that cared about those spirits.
And I too, I initially had, before I realized that I was related to her, but I always had this sort of like this caricature of what I thought Lizzie Borden was as a person, like this crazed, axe wielding sociopath. But when I got to really know her and understand her story, especially by going to Maplecroft and going there several times before, I got to know the real Lizbeth, and I felt like she's been completely misunderstood. But I also, there's still the underlying thought that she did commit the crime, and that's something that I'm glad they did ask us, do we think that she actually was responsible? I mean, I actually never asked you, Luann, do you think that she was responsible?
I don't think she did it. Just, and I don't know if we talked about it, but just all the clothes that she would have had to put on, getting her hair clean and, dry for people to start coming into the house. I've always thought it was more like possibly a family conspiracy,
Right.
because Emma was out of the house. She was in Fairhaven visiting some friends of hers, the Brownells, and Lizzie was trying to get the maid, Bridget, out of the house. She wanted to go shopping for a cloth sale, but Bridget wasn't feeling well that day. She didn't want to go shopping. So if, say, someone in the family wanted to kill them because of the will and make sure that, Lizzie and Emma got the money, they wanted the girls out of the house. They didn't want them there at all.
And sort of the underlying thesis of Curse of Lizzie Borden is that there was a sinister force at play. And looking back at that, do you think that that's possible?
that's like one of those questions, which came first, the chicken or the egg kind of type thing. And that's the way I feel about the Lizzie Borden thing. Like, what came first? Did the murders happen? And then the entity came in, and, because of the turmoil and the hurt and the pain of those murders? Or was the entity there a long time ago, and all of these murders that happened in that small little vicinity around the house, maybe he helped it. Maybe he possessed these people and, helped them murder, rape, kill, things like that. Or, was he just there influencing things? Was he just there watching? It's really hard to say, because I wonder how many times actual crimes that happen nowadays are somehow there's an entity related. You'll see these news reports. Oh, we never thought this guy could do it. He was the nicest guy, and then he murders his wife and kills himself. Who's to say that it wasn't going on for a long time? This was a nice guy, but then he got possessed by, an entity, and it made him kill his wife and then kill himself, because that's supposedly a negative entity's MO, is to, oppress, possess, and then destroy that human spirit.
So, not to change the topic, but if you could stay at any haunted hotel or room with a boo in the world, where would you stay,
Ooh.
Luann?
Oh boy. I've always wanted to go to the Shanley,
Oh,
but there's another one that sounds like just so, I don't know, it's like a sad story. I think it's the Gold Rush. Not the Gold Rush, the Gold, oh my God, the one out in California where it was like a gold rush town.
oh, is it
And
the gold field?
yes, thank you.
Okay, so is that the one that our friend Chris Fleming actually investigated with Ghost Adventures?
Oh, did he?
Yep. So he actually channeled in that episode of Ghost Adventures at the hotel. So yeah, that's interesting that you chose that hotel.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't know he'd been. I haven't caught up on. I've had Discovery Plus for like a few months now, so I'm catching up on all those paranormal shows. There's like so many of them. I'm kind of going back and forth between them all, so I haven't seen that episode.
All right, Luann. So it was great to reconnect with you and to talk about our experience. And are you doing okay? Because I know for me it took me months to recover. Are you still affected by what we went through?
Um, I don't let them. When you were having problems and Chris was having problems, I knew and I could feel that, and I put my protections up. I was like, "No way are you getting in this house." And I have to be like that. I do those kind of cases. So, but since you guys got, your situation settled, I haven't really felt anything. I mean, here and there, because he would love to get me back for that, but he's over there and I'm over here, and I think we broke like the connection that I know you guys could feel something was connected to me.
Yeah.
He knew we were coming, and
Yep.
he had been connected and trying to get in for probably about a year before we actually did it. So,
And what we did is we ended up like that connection. We cut the cord uh,
yeah,
with you, but it also retaliated against me and Chris.
yeah.
So there's been a lot of retaliation. But again, I would do it again. And Luann, it was great to catch up, and it was great to look back at what we did. I'm so proud of Curse of Lizzie Borden. It's not perfect, but there's things about it that I would probably like that could have been, I guess, more clear, but I'm proud of us as a group and what we were able to achieve.
Me too. I'm glad we actually got the chance to do that. And um I mean, a show is a show, and it came out actually better than I was expecting because, I mean, I expect them to go, like, for all drama, but they did actually try to tell the story the way it happened the best that they could. I mean, they're not paranormal people, they're TV producer people, so they, considering that to put it together and still get the story and, the just
The
how
shock.
it all worked out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a shock.
Yeah.
A shock
It's a
job.
shock doc, so you had to be shocking. And I I will say when I saw Dave Schrader automatic writing and fighting it, that alone was worth the shock doc admission. Like that was shocking.
It was hard for me to watch because, a lot of I find men, and I don't wanna sound like I'm prejudiced or anything, but they have a harder time living with having, like, skills or gifts, and I think Dave has some skills and gifts that he doesn't wanna face.
Yep.
So it was like shoving it in his face and making him almost like open the door and let all the bats fly out and everything. So, that I think for him was almost like a turning point.
It
Like
was.
maybe the gifts and the skills that he's been given, he'll come to terms with them because I don't think any of us are given these kind of skills unless we're meant to use them and to do good with them. The one thing that has always gotten me is an expression that says everything serves God in the end. And I kind of believe more in like the light than say a God. So for me, everything serves the light in the end. So whether it's Dave learning to use his skills better and helping more people, it was an awakening, I think, maybe for him.
It
And
was. Yeah.
maybe
I
that'll make it easier for him. And that's a good thing because then he can help more people too.
I think we were all called to this show or this case, and we all kind of were able to do things that we never have done before. I mean, I've never channeled on television before, and that was a first for me. And to do things and experience things that we never experienced before, but we all stuck together, and I'm so proud of us for doing that.
Me too.
Well,
Yeah,
Luann,
I never let entities inside me or automatic raid or anything like that. So definitely a lot of firsts.
yeah. Well, Luann, it was a pleasure catching up with you on Haunted Hotels. Thank you for checking in, and we'll check with you guys next week on Haunted Hotels with Sam Baltrusis.